I'm here live today with Touraj Parang, who's the best-selling author of Exit Path, How to Win the Startup Endgame, board member of Serve, investor, startup mentor, M&A advisor, and recovering lawyer, among other things. Touraj, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Ali John. It's very nice to be speaking with you on this LinkedIn Live event.
Yes, I've been looking forward to this very much ever since I read your book. So to get started, given the context of how we're meeting, I would love for you to share a little bit about your journey as an Iranian immigrant to the United States, now an Iranian American. Could you tell us about that?
Absolutely, sure. So I'll go back to sort of the 80s. That's when my family decided to move out of Iran and with the goal of coming to the US. My dad had actually come and studied in the US long time ago, and he was smitten. He felt that this is the land of opportunities, and he wanted me and my three brothers to kind of establish a home here, get educated here, work here. So we came out, but we couldn't get a visa immediately, as I think many of Iranians are familiar. It's not easy to get a visa to US. So we landed in UAE, which at the time did not need a visa for us to go. And we spent a few years there in the hopes of getting a visa to US. We couldn't get that. And we went to the got closer to US, which is Europe, and established a home in Germany. We actually became refugees in Germany, lived in Hamburg for 3 years, and we were lucky enough to finally get that visa to come to US and establish a home. So we landed in Southern California. That's kind of where I went to high school in late 80s. And I quickly realized I needed to up my game, get a better education, and try to make the best of this opportunity that was provided to me, and all the hard work that my parents had put into it. So worked really hard, and sort of got lucky, got into Stanford. I don't think I would get into Stanford today, but it was a little easier back then. And fell in love also with the Bay Area. That was my first exposure to the innovative entrepreneurial culture of Bay Area. And I knew I wanted to do something with technology. I've always actually loved technology and innovation. When I was in Iran as a kid, I used to get this magazine called Danestaniha. And that was kind of like the science magazine. It would have all the latest innovations from the West and all around the world. And so I've always been a fan of innovation, but I tried computer science and engineering at Stanford and realized that's not for me. Instead, I majored in philosophy and economics. Any philosophy and econ major would do, I went to law school after that. Went to Yale to law school, spent 3 years there with the hope and goal of coming back to Silicon Valley and represent entrepreneurs and technologists as a lawyer and help them establish their startups, get it funded, do deals. And that was sort of how I came back to the Bay Area in the late 90s, started as a lawyer. You said I'm a recovering lawyer, and that's very true. I practiced a little bit, but once a lawyer, always a lawyer. And but I've been in business, since the early 2000s as a venture capitalist, then as an entrepreneur who's done several startups with varying degrees of success. And then I've also been on the big corporate side of things, acquiring companies for GoDaddy, taking companies public. I joined GoDaddy before we went public. And now, for the past 2.5 years, I've been with a very exciting startup called Serve Robotics. We do robotic food delivery in Los Angeles, actually. So that takes me back to LA quite a bit. All right, I'll pause here. I hope I answered your question.
I'm just impressed with how humble you are. You're like, got into Stanford, went to Yale. It's no big deal. Those are incredible accomplishments. Even in the 80s, I know 80s and 90s, Stanford was not easy to get into, because I have some family members that tried and didn't work out. So great for you on that. Now, you have this unique perspective based on your path. You started on the corporate law side, helping organizations, form and on the sales and acquisition side of things and all those details. And you transition to, take the risk and start your own startups. And you learned a lot from that, as is outlined in your book. What part of your experience as an immigrant coming in this land of opportunity do you feel contributed to your success or grit or whatever led to your results?
Well, it's actually it's a very for me it's been always a struggle between taking risks and also doing the right safe thing, right? And initially, I used to think that being an entrepreneur was extremely risky. And it's true, it is extremely risky. 90% of startups don't make it. 70% of startups that raise venture capital don't return the money that was invested in them. So I always had that in the back of my mind, that being an entrepreneur is really risky. And as someone who's an immigrant who comes to this country with nothing, literally nothing in our possession, like just the money in our pocket and the clothes in our suitcases, right? I've never wanted to kind of find myself back in that kind of borderline poverty position, right? Being on food stamps and getting government aid so that I can pay for rent, which is the case when you first enter this country. So I've always had this fear of kind of not being financially taken care of. So you have aspirations as an immigrant because you feel like this is a land of opportunity, as you said, and you want to make the most of it. But at the same time, you don't want to take too much risk. Now, lo and behold, that's not really unique to immigrants either. Most successful entrepreneurs do that. They kind of balance risk-taking with risk mitigation. And so this struggle that I felt inside about, like, I want to make the most of the opportunities provided, but at the same time, don't want to take too much risk, sort of manifested itself throughout my career. That's why, for instance, when I went to Stanford, I love philosophy, so I studied philosophy, but at the same time, I took economics. I wanted to hedge my risk a little bit. Then I went to law school because I kind of felt that, look, this country is based on laws, right? And in order for me to succeed here, I better understand the laws and understand the foundations of what makes this system work. And then I came out and started practicing law, which is a pretty safe bet. But I had this nagging feeling that, I'm not exactly the right fit. It's a great risk averse kind of thing, and lawyers by nature are very much risk averse and conservative. That's why they go into the legal profession. But I felt that I wanted to take more risks than that. But then I didn't have quite the appetite to take a lot of risk. Again, I didn't want to go back to zero income, which a lot of founders do when they start their own companies. So the salary of a law firm is pretty much golden handcuffs. So what I did, I kind of figured out an in-between, which was becoming a venture capitalist. So I was in the business world, but at the same time, I had a salary, right? And then again, once I learned the skills and I summoned up enough courage, then I became an entrepreneur and started my first startup. Again, this struggle between risk-taking and risk mitigation is something that I actually talk a lot about in my book. And that's kind of what I preach, about what I mentor entrepreneurs. I kind of help them realize this tension between what is a healthy amount of risk and how do you mitigate against some of these risks.
Thank you. And talking about your book, I understand from another interview you had, the book took you about 5 years, right?
Yes.
So long journey. You said something that struck me, and I never promote a book just to promote a book. Like this book, I have been recommending to everyone that's in my network that has a startup. They're looking for a seed round of funding or looking for investors. I get a lot of people reaching out to me, and I make introductions. And lately, I've been telling them, you have to read this book, because some of the statistics you shared that for me um, were really incredible. One was, for every one IPO, there are 30 acquisitions. So just mathematically, it's like everyone wants to make their company profitable, have a big exit. They're not thinking of the acquisition route, and you're basically like 30-1 odds that you're going down the wrong path. So and your book has a very, I felt there's like a master class, 20 years of knowledge all in one. And the thing you had said is you wrote the book that you wish you had when you started your journey. And I think, a lot of people listening today in our live audience, and for those of you who are live, please feel free to, in the comments, add any questions or any things you'd like us to cover in the time we have. But really, this is super impactful. Like the mistakes and the techniques and the strategies and building leverage, like all these things you go into great detail in the book, which is awesome. So my question for you is, you said you did this because you wanted to make an impact, you wanted to help others, and you do that you're involved in groups that help startups. What has been what has been one, if you can remember one bit of feedback you got from someone who read the book that meant a lot to you, that made the 5 years worth it? Can you share any of those bits of feedback?
Absolutely. I just received one from you, but thank you so much
Oh,
for
okay.
those
Oh,
kind.
okay.
Yeah.
See what he did there? He's good. This guy's good.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. And I know you meant it when you said that, and it really lands, because honestly, as an author, you kind of put your heart and your soul out there. Really, it's like kind of almost like being naked and being out in the world, and you don't know how it's received. So it always warms my heart when I hear feedback like this. So thank you. I do constantly get these LinkedIn messages or emails about what a game changer the book has been for folks, because exactly I touch on a topic that's really not talked about. In fact, it's a taboo topic in Silicon Valley. I wrote an HBR article last year when the book came out about this notion of this taboo, which surrounds kind of entrepreneurs' desire to sell their startup. It's almost like a stigma when, as an entrepreneur, you talk to folks, either your other entrepreneurs or investors even, about your exit strategy. And that has been such a bad thing for, I would say, the entire entrepreneurial ecosystem, because it stops folks from working on something that can be outcome defining for them until it's too late. And I had that problem myself with my first startup. My first startup, Jackster, we kind of put our heads down, put our blinders down, never really did anything about creating strategic partnerships, being out there and courting potential acquirers, buyers of the business, because we thought we had it figured out. When the times were good and we were like rising very fast, raising tons of venture capital money, we thought we had it made. We thought we were on our path to being a $1 billion plus company. And then lo and behold, the economy had a different story in mind for us, which is 2008, 2009 downturn, very similar to the COVID downturn. Like all of a sudden, the economy came to a screeching halt. Investors, venture capitalists were not investing anymore. And we were sort of left there just completely unprotected, without a plan B, not knowing what to do. And so we scramble to salvage what we had built. We needed to raise more money because we were thinking about grow, grow, grow. All investors, everybody was encouraging us to just pour kind of gasoline on fire and grow, and which we were growing very fast. We went to 0 to 10 million users in record time. But that growth meant that we didn't focus on monetization. because we thought investors will continue funding us. And then once we have a massive market share, then we'll turn on the monetization and start making money from our users. So we didn't have enough time to basically to do anything with that company. And so 4 years of blood, sweat, and tears, a lot of dreams were shattered in just one summer, where we had to do a fire sale of the company. So not creating those strategic partnerships turned out to be the worst mistake we made. In fact, we had competitors who had built those relationships, and they had radically different outcomes. One of them became Google Voice. The other one sold to Telefonica for $200 million. Another one to British Telecom for $100 million. All doing pretty much the same thing we were doing. They just had the better business sense of creating those strategic partnerships. So I saw what difference that can make, and no one told us that you should be doing that. So with my next startup, I changed plans. The first thing I did, I sat down the executive team and talked to them about creating an exit strategy, planning for our future, having an end in mind as we go through the steps. And that just changed the game for us. And we took a company that was 20 million in valuation to over 100 million in just 2 years, and sold it in a very hot kind of auction where multiple public companies were bidding for it. So I saw that difference, and I've been preaching this message to a lot of entrepreneurs, but I've been doing it one-on-one. So I needed more of a platform. And that's the reason I wrote the book, and it took 5 years to do it, because I had a day job and other activities. So I was doing it night and weekends here and there. Pandemic actually helped me to find the time, because by cutting my commute, I had more time to work on the book to actually put it together. And ultimately, I feel that all of us as a community, the humanity as a whole, we have a lot of challenges. The world is just getting tougher and tougher. Climate change, health issues, rise of dictatorial or autocracy. There's no matter what, there are a lot of problems out there, and entrepreneurs seem to be the only ones that have viable solutions or have a path for us to get out of this mess. And if we can sort of tilt the odds in favor of entrepreneurs just a little bit, I think we all win as a society. So that's my way of sort of helping make the future a better place for my 2 daughters and for all of us, hopefully.
That's great. You mean, wait, government is not the answer for all this? That's so weird.
Fortunately not. I've been disappointed.
So you mentioned both in your book and now you have 2 daughters. I have a 10-year-old son and a 13-year-old daughter. As a father who was raised at a very different time with different resources, different technology, different opportunities, different threats, I often have concerns for my kids, concerns that I'm trying to address the best I know how. What are some of for your daughters, what are some of the things that concern you or are challenges you feel they're going to face that maybe you didn't face? And how are you addressing them?
Yes. So I think right now, especially and my daughters are similar in age, 10 and 15. Right now, the challenges that this generation faces are so tremendous, right? And I would say probably the number one thing that we struggle on a daily basis with is social media, screen time, all these notifications, all the distraction. And it's a tremendous also upside to it. They have the world's knowledge at their fingertips. They can just ask Google anything or ask ChatGPT anything, and they have all these amazing, incredible responses, which I couldn't even dream of having. I would have to, as a child, even in the US, I would have to make an appointment to go to the library, look up the right
microfiche. Do you remember microfiche?
Exactly.
Do you remember what that
exactly.
is?
I mean, God, right? I mean, you couldn't that's microfiche was the way we would see past newspaper articles, right? Past magazine articles. So, it's a different, they live in a different world, But with all the amazing amount of information they have, there's also the challenge for them is to kind of how do they find the signal among all the noise, because now there's an information overload and there's all these algorithms, all this AI that's fighting for their attention, right? Trying to distract them and get them to do to click on their and spend time on their app or consume their content. So that's, I would say that's the biggest challenge. So my role as a parent is to kind of instill the right values and help guide them towards manifesting their own goals and helping them kind of become smarter consumers of social media or anything else kind of technology related.
Have you encouraged them to pursue a certain path given your awareness of what the opportunities are in tech?
Yes. My philosophy for child raising is to expose your kids to as many opportunities as possible and try not to give your own opinion because I feel like kids either will try to if once you put out there what your opinion is, they either try to be good kids and make you happy, so and suppress their own desires in order to make their parents happy, or they just rebel against it. And neither of those situations is a good one. So that's why I kind of have to censor myself a lot. And I do encourage them, though, to really take a serious look at liberal arts. I loved studying philosophy in college. I felt that that was an incredibly life-enriching, life-changing major for me, but it's not for everybody. And law, I feel that there was a lot of benefits to law and being a lawyer, but there was also a lot of downsides. One problem I had actually was that when I decided to study law and to practice law, I never really took the time to go and sit down with an actual lawyer and see what their day-to-day life is like, what are the pros and cons. And I kind of learned that while I was a lawyer. So what I really encourage young folks do is expose themselves, understand how different people in different careers lead their day-to-day life, maybe shadow, intern to the extent that they can. So maximize exposure. And all the careers that we see today, because of the evolution in AI and technology, is probably not going to be very different. So whatever perspective we bring as parents is probably outdated already anyway. So we can provide frameworks and provide guidance, but I don't think we should provide specific directions.
Well, that's good guidance here. You mentioned AI, generative AI, and maybe as a spoiler, you had when you wrote your book a year ago or so, in an interview I listened to, you said that if you had written it again, there's an opportunity to leverage generative AI in a startup. Can you, we have maybe 6 or 7 minutes left. Can you just share, if it's okay, can you share your thinking? Like, how would you leverage generative AI in a startup?
Yes. What I'm not saying is to use generative AI to give you your startup idea and like ask ChatGPT, hey, what should I start a business on, and then go and do that. But I do think generative AI, all these AI tools are amazing, and powerful instruments you can use to become much better at what you are going to already do anyway. I know that, for instance, for the company I know, like Serve Robotics, I kind of went and queried one of these generative AI tools about, hey, I want to start a robotics company or sidewalk robot. What do you see to be the challenges? What do you see to be the opportunities? Who do you think are most interested partners in a business like this? Where do you think these kind of robots should first be deployed? Why? So you can have a thought partner, someone that can provide you with some initial thoughts. Like, as a writer, for instance, we get writer's blocks. Well, one of the great things you can have with a tool like ChatGPT is kind of query it and help it provide you with some versions of something that may start an idea in you, and then you kind of follow up on that. So kind of use it as like that, perhaps not so silent co-founder, somebody who is there for you to bounce ideas against. I actually put on my LinkedIn, and I think your listeners could find it very easily in the documents on my LinkedIn profile, a little bit of a primer, like it's just like, I think 10 slides or 12 slides of what are all the various things what are different prompts a founder could quickly use to benefit kind of in their business plan creation, and as they build their startup, to benefit from generative AI a little bit. And that just a tip of the iceberg. I think your creativity is really the limit of what it can do and how it can help you. Again, don't take everything it says for granted, because it has limitations, and it's more of a the large language models are more of a predictive machine of what they feed you what you want to hear based on what they have seen other people talk about. So it's not necessarily coming up with earth-shattering insights, but it is helpful for for us as entrepreneurs to be in dialogue with a tool like this.
I like that, using them as a thought partner. That's a great way that you put it. As we're wrapping this up, are there any current projects or initiatives that you're excited about that you would like this audience to know about?
Well, I'm definitely very interested in the intersection of robotics and AI. Again, my company, Serve Robotics, is building autonomous robots that are basically automating the last mile delivery, like, for instance, food delivery in LA. Some of your audience members may have seen them walking around or rolling around on sidewalks. I feel like we are at the cusp of a Cambrian explosion in robots and what robots can do, because we have a number of things that are coming together. AI, great sensors at affordable prices, ubiquitous broadband connectivity, and a lot of regulatory permission that I think we are at the beginning of a robotics revolution. And of course, AI itself is just changing every industry. So it's a great time to be an entrepreneur.
Couldn't agree with you more. So final question, maybe the most important one. What is your favorite Persian dish?
Oh my God. I've always had a soft spot for fesenjoon.
Fesenjoon, okay.
Yes, it's definitely the combination of taste. It's so unparalleled. And it's funny because most non-Persians that I introduced it to, they also love it. So
that's
if
good.
you want to impress a non-Persian, I would say fesenjoon. Kebab is always a staple, and there are other dishes, or sabzi or whatnot. But fesenjoon, hits the kind of the foodie in everyone.
So could you describe what goes into fesenjoon for those who don't know what it is?
Oh, wow. I am a terrible cook.
Main ingredients.
I've completely outsourced that to my wife, but walnuts, I think sometimes you make it with turkey or with chicken meat. It's got this.
It's tangy.
Tasty, yeah, it's tangy.
It's got, I think, pomegranate juice or something.
is a secret key ingredient, but like the combination of these things is just you're making me hungry.
I love it. Yeah, me too. And on the other end of the spectrum, the food that I've had least success with non-Persians who grew up on it liking is a drink called dur, which is yogurt and water with mint. And it's like a salty drink, but some people love it. Most people hate it. So
yeah,
awesome.
I was very disappointed when I introduced my college roommate to dur. He called it seawater. So that was very disappointing.
I love it. Well, Touraj, thank you so much for taking the time to get to know each other, share your perspective, and most importantly, anyone out there that hasn't read the book, anyone who's thinking of a startup at any stage of a startup, looking for another round of funding, there it is, Exit Path. Highly recommended. I learned so much, and it changed my whole perspective. Business 101, they say start with the end in mind, and yet most people don't think of acquisition and all the things to position for that going forward. Touraj, thank you so much. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you, Arjun. Thank you for those great questions and the endorsement.